Hello and welcome to episode 2 of our podcast. In this episode, we cover pretty much how my healing journey started, how I started doing energy healings on other people, and how that evolved over a certain amount of time. So welcome back. Where did we leave off last time, darling?
Last time, and we should say perhaps that we are actually husband and wife.
Oh yeah, we're husband and wife.
Just in case
Yeah, we're
anybody's
husband
wondering.
and wife. Just in case you haven't got that from the first episode.
Okay, we ended up talking about your starting Reiki treatments,
Yeah.
and the meditation and the first kind of visualization things that you got out of some of that, and the incredible Bill Nye
Oh,
story.
the Bill Nye story. We got to that, didn't we?
So maybe looking back now, obviously we're years into the future, looking back at that experience now, what do you think of it now? Or what was the learning out of that? And then what happened next? Where did you take the healing?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, this grew a lot for me from that first experience, and looking back on it now, I think the reason it all grew so quickly, and we'll talk more about what I mean by that, but what I find looking back at that time is that I was just totally out of my way at that point. I think possibly because of the way I felt, and I was trying to do what I had to do to feel better. I was very coherent, very much in a, yeah, why not? Yeah, let's give it a go. Like, I didn't give anything too much thought. I was kind of in awe of what I'd seen with my friend and her dad. I was in awe of that, but at the same time, it felt totally natural. And looking back, I'm surprised that I was so calm about it, but I was. I didn't allow myself to get in my own way, to be honest with you. I tried not to overanalyze it. I was more in awe of it, and I just thought, wow, how lovely and how amazing is that? Because I knew that it had helped my friend as well. And that was a big motivator for me to carry on doing it. Because I thought, if I can help people, I've always liked to help people. I've always been generous in that way. I'm very compassionate when it comes to human beings, and I think there's not enough of it around, and I've kind of always felt that way. So it for me, it was this is really cool. Like, I just thought it was a cool thing that I was able to do.
And you say help people. Where was the help coming from? Is that a comfort from, I don't know, seeing a loved one or something,
Yeah,
or getting
I
some
think,
message, or are they bringing some message?
we all know that, we've all I've lost a lot of people in my life, as you know, and so have you. So I think the thing for most of us when we lose someone is, not apart from the fact that we miss them, and from a selfish standpoint, it's we're angry because we still want them in our lives. It's, where are they? And are they okay? Are they sad? Are they okay? Are they really at peace? Is there anything after death? Are they still there? Everybody asks that question. I think everybody asks that question when they lose someone. And the idea that they're still there, still seeing you, they're okay. And I'll talk more about that as I go through the other healings, but they're more than okay. That brings someone so much comfort. Like, it helps in a time of grief. It really, really helps. It helps to have connection, and it helps to know that they're okay. So that's what I meant by helping other people. Like, yeah. It's such an awful time to be in grief. It's such a difficult time. And I think it just really helps people. And I honestly believe that it helps them in ways that even I can't see, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Just being in that space, having that connection, holding space for someone to have that connection, helps them beyond what I'm able to see and say.
Do you think that's in a way that they can, I don't know what the right word is, transmit something to that person, or give something to that person?
They're energetically in the same space as that person. So, with that friend and the Bill Nye incident, her saying it felt like there was someone in the room, I felt really emotional. Well, that's because she was in the energy of her dad. And
Yeah.
I think, that I don't know what that does, but she certainly felt a million times better and happier and lighter. And, still in grief, but less in grief, if that makes sense. So, yeah, that's what I mean by helping other people in that respect.
And a slightly leading question, but is there an element of guidance that comes from that experience, or
Yeah, so
to you
initially,
maybe as part of the
yeah,
process?
in the very early days, like in that experience, there wasn't any guidance to me. I was still trying to make sense of it. But then as I started doing more of it, the weirdest thing that happened for me was I started receiving guidance from my dad.
And just for clarity, your dad has passed away.
My dad passed away in 1991. And my dad was the
And we're recording
last.
this in 2025.
And we're recording
So
this in 2025, yeah. And this was happening. When was this happening? I was 47 or something. So what's that?
a long time ago.
12 years ago. 12 years ago. So what was that? 2013 or something like that. 2012, 2013. Around there is where all of this was happening. Now, if you'd known my dad was a party animal. He was a heavy drinker. Had his good sides and his bad sides because of his addiction. But he was not what you would call a spiritual person, put it that way. He was far away from that. In fact, I remember when I was really small, I was really young. I was probably about 6. And I was really aware of my guides and guardians in the bedroom at night, protecting me, talking to me, helping me. I was really aware of them. And I remember commenting to him, "Oh no, I'm okay because I've got my I can't remember what I called them, but I said, the tall people that come and look after me, they watch me while I sleep." And he said, "Oh, you're dreaming. You're just dreaming." And what was really interesting is that when he connected to me after all of these years, when he connected, he was at his best, obviously not drinking. And he taught me to take my client that was lying on the couch. He'd say to me, bring them to the beach, like bring them to the water. And I know now why he was doing it, but at the time I didn't know. So, he'd appear to me and he'd say, right, when I started doing more and more healings, he'd appear to me and he'd say, right, take this person on this couch to the water, like in your mind, take them to a still, happy place. And that was my place, So I'd take them to the beach, our beach in Addis, where we've got our apartment. I'd take them there to our beach in Spain. And we'd be on the beach. My dad would be sitting on the sand, kind of guiding me, keeping me in the moment, keeping me focused on the person and my intention focused on the person that was on the couch. And like, honestly, when I think about it now, it sounds completely mad.
And you're visualizing this. This is what's going on.
Yeah, like he's talking to me in my head.
Yeah.
He's not talking using words because they don't use words. There's no language required, actually. But there's an understanding for me. And of course, for me to tell you the story, I have to use words. So it is a telepathic experience. But what fascinated me is that I would see all of that. I'd see my dad, I'd see the couch on the beach, and I'd be sitting in my saddle chair with my hands on the person that was on the couch, and my dad would be sitting on the sand guiding me. And what's really interesting is when I look back now, the early healings that I did used to take me about an hour and a half. And it was because I kept losing concentration and my dad kept bringing me back to the moment. It's fascinating, honestly fascinating. It fascinates me.
As well as those hands-on, treatments on the couch, did you also do some distance healing?
So there were 2 things. Let me take you back now. So I'd done that Bill Nighy one, and then I had some other friends ask me for healings. And one of them asked me to do a healing for her mum. So her mum had been in a state of depression for quite a long time actually. And her mum was really suffering. Her knee was really hurting and she was getting really down about it. And she said, would you mind doing a healing on my mum? I said, oh yeah, bring her. And she said, oh no, she won't come. She's too depressed. She won't come. I said, oh, let me try and do a distant one, because I was taught to do distant Reiki. So let me try and do a distant one. So I said, just give me a picture of your mum. So she gave me a picture of her mum, and and her name. She gave me her name. And I just went to lie on my bed and put my hands on my heart.
And is that all you needed, the picture? You didn't need to know where she was? Or...
No, it helped me to just see the face and the name, the first name. In fact, in all the years I've been doing healings, I've never ever asked for more than a first name and a phone number. For me, it's better if I don't know the person at all, to be honest. So I thought, well, I'll give this a go. I mean, at that time, I didn't know even if I could do a distant healing. I didn't know if I was able to do it. But the fascinating thing is, I did do it, and I saw a nun. And this nun presented as someone young, like a young nun. And I thought, wow. And I knew that this nun was helping her and always with her and trying to lift her out of her depression and trying to show her another way to live, in a way. I also knew that it was her left knee that was really hurting her. And I knew that all of her ailments were being caused by trauma, but I don't know why I knew that. I just knew that. I didn't know what the traumas were, but the nun helped me to understand that it was all trauma-based. All of her physical ailments and illnesses were brought on by her trauma. So, and I didn't know what all of her... And you didn't know
she had a trauma or...
I didn't know what their trauma was. No, I didn't. So, anyway, I'd seen this nun, and this nun was called Sister Mary. And then years later, like, I kept seeing this nun. I treated this patient many more times, did loads of Reikis on her, and incredible things happened after that, because I did actually connect. The first time she came to me in person, I did actually connect with her dead husband. So there's a big story to tell about that, but I won't go into the detail of that. But basically, this nun, years later, I found out that this nun was the nun that had taught me to read when I was a little girl.
Right.
So, that's all fascinating as well, like how those connections start to make sense. And I remember saying to her, oh my God, but that nun was old, and when she shows up to me, she looks really young. She says, well, yeah, she must have been young at some point. Like, she's presenting at her best. And that, of course, makes a lot of sense too. So yeah, there was that one. So I was able to do a distant healing, which was really interesting. And also, what's another interesting thing is that person had gone to other healers and to spiritual churches in the past, and the nun had always appeared for her. The same nun had always appeared for her.
And did she know that nun?
Yeah.
From her previous
100%.
Yeah.
She knew that.
From her physical life?
Yeah, she knew this nun. The nun had helped her a lot.
Right.
Helped her and her children after her husband. Her trauma was that her husband died suddenly.
Right.
So we will talk about that at some point, but in a later episode, because that deserves an episode of its own.
Yeah. So you're starting to do more treatments. So
Yeah.
what kind of happened with the healing practice?
Oh, okay. So one day, one of the people that came to see me was my friend Rachel. She's a beautician. She's a beautician, and she had a beauty business. She rented some rooms from a local hairdresser, and she was established there. And I used to go to her as a beautician. And she said, oh, will you do it on me? One day we were talking, and I was telling her some of the things that I'd experienced. And she said, oh, you look so much better. And I started telling her about, the previous healings that I'd done, and that I'd started to see some stuff. And she said, oh, will you do it on me? I said, yeah, sure. So she came to see me, and I did a healing on her. And I've used her name now, so I'm not going to tell you what I saw for her. But what I will tell you is that she loved the treatment so much. She said to me, you've got to come and do this at the salon. This is priceless, what you're doing. You have to come and do this at the salon. And I said, oh, I don't know, because now it's not Reiki anymore. Now it's like a bit different. Like, I'm not using the symbols, and I'm seeing stuff, and I don't even really know what it is. I started to doubt myself really into could I charge for this, or Like, is it really a business? I just did. There were so many things I didn't know. I said my son is too young, and I need to be here for him, and I can't afford to pay you for the room, and I just didn't know. I didn't know anything. I said, I don't even know what I would charge. She said, shut up, just come and do it. I'm not going to charge you for the room. You can use it, because she had 2 rooms, and one of them was quite often empty. And so she said, you can just use it all the time that it's empty. So we kind of made that work, and it was amazing. Like, it was really good. And honestly, about, I don't know, 150 clients later, I started doing healing there. And 150 clients later, I took my healing back to my house. And yeah.
So you said in there that I think it wasn't really Reiki anymore. You'd started doing different things and not using the Reiki symbols. And so what was going on there? If you're not calling it Reiki, was it a new thing, or?
I just felt like I couldn't call it Reiki, because it was kind of evolving into my own modality. It was just energy healing. It was just my way of healing. And in fact, years later, I realised that, a lot of these treatments are just commercialised treatments. When you look at the story of Dr. Usui and how Reiki came about.
And who's Dr. Usui?
He's the founder of Reiki. But actually, the way he founded Reiki is he took himself off into the mountains on a spiritual journey. He became a truth seeker, and he decided to stop whatever it was he was doing before, and he took himself off up into the mountains to meditate and be alone and contemplate. A time of introspection, a time of truth seeking, to fully understand who he was and why he was here in the world. So Reiki was a byproduct of that, and that I think made me realise why the hands-on part isn't the healing part. In all honesty, it isn't. So
what is the healing part? Begs the question.
The meditation. And
what does that bring?
What bring to the person on the couch? What does it bring?
Yeah, or as part of the treatment, or the process, or the modality. What does the meditation part do to improve the treatment?
Meditation connects you to the field of all that is, which is what we are. So you're connected to I hold the client in a space where they can connect to the field, the field of all that is, the Planck field, whatever you want to call it. When you hold someone in that space, all healing occurs in that space. If you can get the client to relax enough, and for me, the best way to do that was to tell them to go to sleep. If there's nowhere you need to be right now, completely relaxed, go to sleep. And as soon as you start laying on hands and you intend for them to go to sleep, they would inevitably fall asleep. Okay. Those that fell asleep got the best healings ever, because they were totally out of their way. They weren't aware. It was easier for me to hold them in the space. I didn't have to work as hard to hold them in that space. And the healing comes from that connection to the field. And you know that you're being assisted. And
have you got an example? I mean, I know of one. Obviously, you don't tell me about the treatments, because that's not, you shouldn't do that. But without knowing the names of the people, you've hinted at some of the things that go on. I think there was one about a gardener that was interesting.
Oh God, you start to see all sorts of. Oh yeah. So what happens is, the healing is you holding someone in the space. The other thing that was important for the client, and the reason the clients kept coming back, was because of the wisdom or the information that they received. You always received wisdom from spirit or the field, or whatever you want to call it. You always received wisdom. Like, quite often I would connect to people's past loved ones, as you know, with the Bill Nighy story, with the nun, with all of those things. My own father. So when I was treating a client, I either connected to one of their past loved ones, or I would connect to a guide that would give them whatever information they needed to help them along their way, that would help them in that moment. And that was always my intention. So I'd set the intention at the start of a healing. I'd like this person to be held in a frequency of healing so that they walk out of here balanced, and also for whoever is taking care of them and working with them to give them all they need to know to make them feel better today and to help them in their life today. So that was always my intention. I'd set the intention, and that's what the customer would get. That's what the client would get. Exactly that. Whatever they needed to know. So in one instance, the gardener story was just fantastic. I'd been treating this lady for a while. She'd come to me a few times. Her husband and father had both passed away, and she was quite a spiritual person. Like, she spent some time in meditation and contemplation as well. So she was quite a connected kind of person. But this particular day, so I treated her over a 2-year period probably. I'd treated her a few times, let's say 5 times. And this particular day she came to me, I was doing the healing on her, and it became a very strange healing. So I got both her father and her husband, who seemed to work together to guide her, which was really, really nice. And they were almost having a conversation between themselves that was for me to hear, but not to be part of. It was a very strange healing. So I just carried on doing the healing, and I was listening to them talk. There was a lot of banter going on between them. And then they were chatting, and I don't know what they were chatting about, having a laugh really. And they both turned to me and said, "Oh, she needs a gardener. Yeah, she needs a gardener." So I was waiting, because usually when I'm given that type of information, I see the garden, like I see why. They show me why. And in this instance, they weren't showing me the garden. And I thought, well, what does she need a gardener for? So I said to them, what for? Like, what is her gardener miss? Why does she need a gardener? All of this in my head, of course. And they said, just tell her she needs a gardener. She'll know what we mean. So I thought, this is random, but obviously they've told me to tell us. I always tell what I'm told, what I'm given. I always give what I'm given. It's not mine. It's not for me to make sense of it. I just give it. So at the end of the healing, she knew that I was going to tell her stuff, because I always did. And I said, I'm really sorry. Like, today's is really random. I can't make sense of it. Both your dad and your husband have made it very clear to me that it's not for me to make sense of. I've just got to tell you what they said. She said, oh, okay. She laughed. And I said, but basically, I don't know if your garden's a mess, but you need a gardener. And they both agreed. And I told her how it happened, that they were talking amongst themselves, and, and she was like, oh my God, this is just amazing. And I'm going to explain. I know exactly what you mean. I know why you're saying it. I know why they're saying it. And she was saying thank you to them at the time. And she said... and
I'm guessing it's not a garden.
It's not the garden. So what's interesting is she's got 2 children. And obviously she'd not been in a relationship since her husband passed away. And she'd met somebody, and she was seeing him, and one day he came to her house, and her children didn't know that she was in a relationship with him, but he was helping her in the garden. She was doing some gardening, and he was helping her. And the children said, oh, how come he comes round a lot? And she said, oh, he's helping me with the garden. He's a gardener, and he's helping me with the garden.
Right.
So
that's crazy.
So what's really crazy, but it's beautiful, isn't it, that both her dad and her late husband it was their way of saying, yeah, like, you're free to see this guy, like.
I mean, that must be anybody in that situation with a loved one that's passed, and any, getting into a new relationship. It's so tricky,
difficult. Yeah,
tricky
like
thing.
It's so difficult. I mean, I don't know, because I haven't lost my husband, thank God. But you must go through some guilt or some feeling of, I don't know. It must be very difficult when you've lost your life partner
So that could bring some real
to have another relationship.
peace.
But for them to say, yeah, you need to do it.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so like, look, there's lots of things like that. I don't remember them all, but there's loads. And I will write about those in the future or record some instances, because I do have all the recordings, of course, and as long as I don't use anybody's name, that should be fine. Yeah, so the healings took on like a big turn, and people were getting a lot from it.
So as part of the healing process, were you, the more you did it, were you learning, or were you getting more information or more
Oh God,
guidance as
yeah.
the
So
process went on? What
I
was
just
going
got
on
better
there?
at it, if I'm honest. So at the beginning, I had my own Kundalini issues as well. Like I didn't know what was happening at the time, but now looking back, I know what was going on.
Just explain what Kundalini is.
Yeah,
Just
so Kundalini is an energy that runs up the energy centers of your spine, but it's intense, like really intense, overwhelming. And the first set of healings that I did at the salon, when I used to do the healings at the salon, in Rachel's salon, I I experienced some difficulties actually. Quite often I'd come away feeling sick, because it used to take me an hour and a half for two reasons. One, because I had to learn how to stay connected to get enough information for the person and enough of a healing for the person. But secondly, because I was experiencing some energy issues myself, whereby I'd have my hands on the client, and suddenly the energy running up through my spine was so intense and so overwhelming that I'd cry and sweat. Like, it was quite disgusting. I'd have to take my cardigan off.
not just the menopause.
No, it was horrendous. I mean, at that point, I don't think my hot flushes had even started, to be honest. I don't think they had. They started later. The hot flashes came afterwards, after I was 50. This was pre-50. And I only experienced that intense, because I was always freezing cold. I only experienced that intense heat and perspiration when I was doing these healings. And it was embarrassing, because literally I'd take my cardigan off and my vest top would be drenched. It was
So what
awful.
was going on there? Is that you developing as part of a process, or is that
Kundalini
something to do
energy,
with the
yeah, I think
healing,
it was
or what?
part of my. That Kundalini energy is part of an awakening process, isn't it? So I think it was really
So you
me.
developing.
Yeah, me becoming better at what I was doing,
Okay.
receiving more downloads, getting more connected. Because actually, as time went on, I kind of adjusted to that kind of frequency. It felt like a different frequency, if I'm honest. It felt like a different energetic frequency. I felt like my own personal vibration was rising. My depression disappeared completely within the first month of doing those. Like, it completely disappeared. I'd already
Of
made
doing what?
progress of doing those healings where the Kundalini started rising.
Right.
It just completely disappeared. All of a sudden, I had a new understanding of life. I don't even know how to explain that to you, but I did. I had a new understanding. I realized that we create everything in our minds. I realized that if I was having a bad time, it's because of my thoughts. I knew that, but I didn't quite know why. I hadn't completely worked it out. But I knew that that was true. Throughout that whole period, and throughout that intense Kundalini and all of that sweating and embarrassment that I went through, and the overwhelm, because I'd be treating a client and I'd start crying. There was two reasons why I'd start crying, because the people that I was connecting to for them were overwhelmingly loving, and that's overwhelming in itself. So it was the amount of love that I was receiving from people that weren't even my people. They were someone else's person. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'd be treating someone and their mum would come through, for example, and their mum would be so overwhelmingly loving towards me that I couldn't really cope with that amount of love. That and the combination of the Kundalini, I couldn't really explain it, and today I can't really fully explain it, to be honest. But that's what I was experiencing. I wasn't sure what was going on. I just knew that I was feeling different. And then after about a month, I thought, I will never be depressed again. And I knew that. I absolutely knew that without a shadow of a doubt.
So we haven't really touched on this. Obviously, you're going through this development process through the experience of doing extra healings and adding elements to it, meditations, etc. But I know in the background you were also doing a tremendous amount of research and reading, and
Oh God,
so
yeah.
for people that, or person that's listening to this, if anybody's listening to this, there's a lot of knowledge that that I know you've gained, and
Yeah.
it might be interesting just to be able to point at some of those sources. So if anybody's interested in looking at any of this stuff,
Yeah.
maybe around the meditation
There was a lot. I mean,
aspects.
I went into overdrive on that. I started with Caroline Miss, or Mace, I don't know how you say her name, MYS. I was led to her because she had a book called, she's a medical medium. Her book's not coming to me now, but Molecules or something like that. That will come back to me. But she's a medical medium, and I thought this healing stuff, like hers was one of the first books I read, and I started looking at her material. But basically, what this work did, that all of those healings and that Kundalini experiences, it led me to start researching the areas of healing, energy, quantum physics, quantum mechanics, epigenetics. Like I went into information addiction, if you like. And I looked at the work of Caroline Mears, Joe Dispenza, the placebo. Because another thing is, I quickly got to the understanding that we heal ourselves. There is no medicine that can heal us. In fact, the only thing medicine does is manage symptoms. When it comes to healing, we do it all. We absolutely do it to ourselves. And I know that for a fact.
Maybe it's worth just giving a brief intro to Joe Dispenza and what happened with him as an
Yeah, and
example.
once I'd got that realization, it's really funny because I didn't kind of go looking for these people, but I'd have these realizations, and then the next day, it almost felt like the next day their book would land on my lap somehow, like I was led to their work. And with Joe Dispenza, I'd had that realization that we heal ourselves. Nobody does it. There's no one else involved in our healing. There's people involved in care, but no one involved in our personal healing. The very next day, Joe Dispenza's book, You Are the Placebo, appeared on my Amazon list. And I bought it because I thought, oh my God, you are the placebo. We heal ourselves. That's what I learned yesterday. That's what I knew yesterday. And so I started to look at Joe Dispenza's journey. For anybody who doesn't know, like his journey is an incredible journey. This man had a terrible accident that rendered him paralyzed, and he healed himself through meditation. He refused surgery, and there was something that sparked in him that told him, no, I can heal myself. That's an incredible thing in itself. When you're in your darkest moment, which is interesting, isn't it? In my darkest moment, I awakened to my potential. In his darkest moment, he was a successful chiropractor with a clinic. He was a triathlete. This is how he had his accident during a triathlon. And in his darkest moment, when he's lying face down on a bed, unable to move, he somehow decides that he's going to heal himself. Like that, where's that coming from? That's a good question, isn't it? And he wrote about it. Joe Dispenza has done incredible work, massive amounts of work in this area. And I am going to plug him here, his film Source, The Source. TheSource.org. If you haven't seen that film and you're questioning anything that you're hearing me say, the best thing you can do for yourself is look at that film because it has scientific research as well.
Okay. It is an amazing story, and it's definitely worth watching that film. I've seen it. It's great.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a good time to take a break. We can come back on other sources and next part of the healing journey.
Yeah.
Awakening journey.
Yeah. I read so much material and read so many books and listened to so many lectures and podcasts and I still do. Like, this journey never ends. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like and subscribe as it really helps me to bring you more free content. Also, if you'd like to know more about my work and what I do, you can check out my website, www.lifeforcefield.com. All of my links are in the description to this video.